students. So today we are going to see the new topic, that is different services within our modular networks, right? So what do you mean by the modular networks? We already seen the hierarchical model, which we are called as like access layer, distribution layer and the core layer, which having this particular model in a network, right? And those who are having all the 6 functional areas, that we can call it as a modular network, right? So today we are going to see what are the different services in that particular modular network, right? So before that we will see what we have covered in our last session, right? So in a last session we have done with our 6 functional areas that we have talked about, that is the enterprise campus layer, edge layer, service provider layer, then enterprise branch, data center and the work from home like the teleworker, right? So enterprise teleworker also we have covered in our last session. So today let's start with the what we are going to cover, that we will see the infrastructure layer services, right? That also the part in a part of our SONA architecture, right? So that's why we have included this particular SONA framework as well. So in that we will see these infrastructure layers, what are the different services with are the same with this our modular networks, right? And after that we will see these network services which will be embedded in our infrastructure services, right? So as in SONA architecture also we have discussed about the infrastructure layer services and the networking services, which are going to on the top of the infrastructure layer services, right? So we will see see the both the services and their types. Then we will have one different security services which will be a part of our modular network design, right? And as you know that how the security will be important with respect to any kind of the network, right? So with respect to that, what are the different services we have and we can be achieved in a modular network design, that can also be we will see today, right? And after that what are the different external threats can be there, right, which we need to avoid or which we need to minimize or which we need to prevent our network from these particular external threats, right? So there are 4 basically external threats with respect to this modular network design that we are going to see today. Okay, so all these things we are going to see in today's lecture, right? And the remaining thing, that is high availability service, voice services, wireless services, right? See, all these things we will see in our next lecture, right? Because it is too lengthy lecture then, right? So we will have we will start with the today's session with this particular Cisco SONA framework, right? You already studied this particular Cisco SONA framework and you already know that there are 3 basically the services, that is the network infrastructure layer, interactive service layer and the application layer, right? And the application layer is also undergoes into 2, that is business application and the collaboration applications, right? And the collaboration application is changed to your collaboration layer, right? So basically we have covered in last few lectures the network infrastructure layers, right, with respect to our server, storage, clients and all these 6 functional areas what we can call in a modular enterprise network, right? That also we have discussed in a couple of last sessions, right? So today we will dedicatedly talk about this particular second layer of the SONA framework, that is nothing but your interactive service layers, right? Because it will be comprised with the 2 services, that is first one infrastructure services and the second one is your application networking services, right? So we will see in infrastructure services how it will be undergoes into a different services types, and as well as in networking services as well, which is nothing but on top of this particular infrastructure layer services, right? So we will start with the first point, that is infrastructure infrastructure layer or infrastructure different services which our modular network may have, right? The first one is your obviously a security services. If you consider any type of the any kind of the network is there, right? And for that the physical security is very much important for that particular internet networking devices, either than the connecting media and all that things, right? Because it will be very much important with respect to the connection or for the communication purpose. So you need to check for the device's health, physical, how they are uh, within the standardized or not, right? So all aspect you need to ensure of the network is secure or not, right? From devices connect to the network, or to secure the transport to data, theft from the theft prevention, right? So that also you need to your functional, it's your task, right? That your network is must be secure from the your data theft, right? So how you are going to apply the security layer within your network premises, right? So it will be very much important with respect to the physical security, as well as in terms of your data security as well, right? So this is your first service in terms of your infrastructure as services. Then we have our second is nothing but your mobility services, right? Which allow users to access a different kind of the network resources, and which will be regardless of their any kind of the physical location, right? So from wherever they are, from their location they can be access the networking resources of your organization. So that is nothing but your the mobility services, right? In last couple of sessions before, right, we have covered one topic, that is evolution of the network, right? In that also the mobility of network we have studied, right? That is a concept called BYOD, right? So bring your own devices we have covered. So in that also we will see how the mobility is important nowadays, right? So the network is in your hand with the some physical devices, right? Mobile phones and all that things, right? So these mobility services also is an important part of with respect to your infrastructure services, right? Then the third one is storage services, obviously, which will be provide you the distributed and virtual storage, right, across the infrastructure, right? So from wherever you are using any kind of the network, right? If you wanted to store something with respect to in your infrastructure, right, the configuration and all that things, right? So in that case also this particular storage services with respect to your infrastructure services we can count, right? Then the fourth one is your voice and the collaboration services, right? So here if you deliver the foundation by which voice can be carried across the network, right, such as security and high availability, right? For example, we can call it as IP phone, right? If you are using IP phone, then that particular voice which will be transferred within your network, right, with an high availability, it must be in high availability and high security as well, right? And the next service is your compute service, right? So you already studied this particular compute service in your cloud platform as well, right? So for the connect and virtualize compute resources based on the application, right? So in this also in virtualized resources, or you need to use some computation part, right? So with respect to that, all the resources can be used by the application by using this particular compute services, right? Then the next one is the identity services, right, which will be used to map the resources and policies to that particular user, right? and that particular devices, right? So it will be map all the policies and the resources to that particular user, to that particular devices, right? And which will be easy for you for your authentication and all that purposes, right? So it will be also an important service with respect to your infrastructure services, if we see, right? So all these types of the services are useful in infrastructure services, right? Then we will see what are the different networking based services, right, which will be we can embed in this particular infrastructure layer services, right? The first one, if you see, the network management, right? So which will be include the local area network management, right, or advanced management of multi-layer switches, or we can also include here the WAN management also, right, for the monitoring, traffic management, access control, right, for all this kind of the thing, right? So monitoring and management part we will be include here, we will be embed here in the infrastructure layer security as well, right? Then the next service we can be count here, that is high availability, right? Because it will be ensure you the end-to-end availability of the services, right? Services, clients, and the sessions, right? Because if you see, we have discussed about your the what we can call reliable network, right? So in that also we have seen, so for the network reliability, the QoS will be there, then fault tolerance your network should be there, right? It will be we can easily troubleshoot the network, right? Then there must be some redundancies of the links and all that things should be there, right? So all this part we have seen in our reliable network, right? So this can be a it will be useful for your high availability of your network, right? Then next part is your the QoS, the quality of service parameters, right? So if you see the any kind of the network, right, which may have these kind of the parameters, right? If you wanted to compare any kind of the algorithm in on any kind of the network, right, then these parameters you must be used for measuring the performance of any kind of the network, right? For example, these are the parameters, the delay, right? Then the delay variation, also we can call it as a jitter, right? Then the bandwidth of your network, then availability of your network, then what is the packet loss, right? If you see whenever you are ping from one PC to another PC, right, then it will be shows you a packet loss also, right? So that also be a one of the parameter of your network to assess any kind of the network, right, or to compare any algorithm on your network, right? So these things you need to keep in mind, right? And because it will be this can be useful for your we can call as to meet the diverse needs of the voice, video, and the data applications, right? So any kind of the application, if you wanted to try it, or you wanted to test it upon any kind of the network, then with respect to these parameters you can test it, right? Because it will be gives you a value added functionality, right? For example, value added functionality, right? So this can be used. Then the next one is your IP multicasting, right? Which will be provides a bandwidth conserving technology, right, which will be uses or which will be reduces a network traffic by delivering a single stream of information, right? Which will be uses for the single stream of the information that will be intended for many recipients through the transport network, right? That means you need to this particular IP multicasting technique, right, which will be useful for conservative bandwidth conservative part, right? So you can be which can be useful for reducing the network traffic, right? Because it will be giving you the single stream of the information, right, instead of the many recipient, right, which will be useful for the transporting any kind of the network, right? So that's why this particular multicasting features which will be we will be used in the video conferencing part, right? Or any corporate communication if you see, or any distance learning software if you see, right? This multicasting thing we are using, right? Because it will be multicast all the packets, right? It should be replicated, right? And that any routers can be enabled with this particular protocol, and which will be gives you an efficient delivery, right? So that's why this IP multicasting can be also one of the networking services which we can be useful in our infrastructure layer services, right? Then we will move towards the security services, right? Which will be in our this particular modular network, right? So if you see in this particular diagram also, right? So this particular diagram is nothing but which are giving you these three particular hierarchical layers, right? The access layer, distribution layer, and the campus core layer also, right? And this is nothing but your the server farm, right? So if you see in this particular diagram itself, right? So this is nothing but your the campus infrastructure if you're talking about, right? And what are the different security services can be a part of this particular modular network, right? That we need to check upon, right? So if you see in this particular server farm module, right? So it can be this particular network management, right? For example, in our college campus also, in the server farm, the 318 centralized server room which we have, right? So for authentication of any kind of the network, right? For example, we can access our college network from our home as well, right? Provided that we must have that authentication with that particular service, right? Network management service with have, right? So sir have that particular access with the help of some OTPs and all that things, right? So that can be a part of this particular server farm, right? So it can be used for the for example, XYZ person is wanted to access our server room, right? Then it so if I am giving one OTP based authentication to my server farm, right, then it will be very easy for me to get a access, or to avoid the fraudulent access to my networking infrastructure, right? So I can use the authentication servers OTPs, right? I can use the some intrusion prevention systems, right? Which will be helpful for logging to minimize the security threats, right? Then if you see in a server farm model, I can also embed a certain security features, right? For example, you can use the host based ideas, right? For example, the system to system, you can use the intrusion detection system, or you can have one intrusion prevention system also in your network, right? So we can call it as a network based ideas, or IPS, right? Then we can use VPN also, right? Virtual private network also, right? Then we can use VLANs also, right? Virtual LANs also, private virtual LAN, right? Then we can have we can use different ACLs also, right? The access control list, right? The standard access control list is there, right? So that can also we will be used in this particular server farm module, right? And also we can have a secure password with respect to our internet networking devices, or with respect to our servers, right? So these kind of the security features or security services I can be used with respect to this particular server farm module, right? And if you consider this particular campus core module, right? So obviously you know that this particular core layer is providing you what the high speed switching, right? Because it is nothing but the backbone of your network, right? Because it will be connecting your server farm to your rest of the network, right? And it must have your high speed switching, right? And if you are performing any kind of the security solutions to on this particular campus core, then it will be slowed down your switching, right? whatever the switching of the packet is required for networking part, right? So if you are adding any security features into this, then it will be slow down your switching of the packets, right? So it will be alternatively slow down your network performance, right? So that's why the we can call it as the measures are there, the standards are there. You not need to perform any kind of the security features on the campus layer. So okay, so this kind of the thing you need to taking care of, you need to remember, right? So on campus core we are not able to perform any kind of the security. Why? Because if we are providing any kind of the security over campus core, then it will be slow down our switching process, right? And that's why the whole network performance can be degraded, right? So that for campus core we are not performing anything, right? We are performing on the server farm first, then we are directly performing on our building distribution, right? That you need to keep in mind. Okay, so in building distribution you can use that access control list, right, to provide security, right? So for as you know, the distribution layer is responsible for your to include the policy based authentication, policy based internet working, right? So in that by using ACS you can do this very easily, right? So and the last one, for the building access layer, you can use switch port security, right? At the port level you can use the security, right, to control the access to the networks, right? So that can be you can do, for example, you can use data link information of that particular port, and with the help of that you can provide any security things to this particular access layer, right? Okay, so this can be part of this. And then if the distribution, if you think, then packet filtering also there, right? So that can be also you can used in this particular distribution layer part. Okay, so this is all about your our different security services in this particular modular network. If you talked about, then we will see what are the different external threats are there, right? And how it can be impacted, or it can be affected on our this particular modular network, right? So if you see in external threat, the first listed out is nothing but your IP spoofing, right? So whenever the IP spoofing attack occurs, right, the hacker can be used a trusted computer, right, which will be useful for launching an attack, right? So whatever it may be, then from inside it may be from the inside, it may be from the outside the network, right? But it can be used some of the trusted computer to launch that particular attack, right? So within a network or outside the network doesn't matter, right? So this can be the hacker can be used these all this kind of the network, right, which will be they can be used the IP addresses with the range of that particular network trusted IP address, right? And with the help of that they can be use certain specific resources from your network, right? So it will be by using that by using that the attacker can used or can be we can call as launch any kind of the attack. For example, DOS attack also they can be used, or they can be also spoof his or her identity, right? And he hide his or her identity by using that, right? So the IP spoofing is also one kind of the attack which will be we will see nowadays very frequently on any kind of the network, right? So whether it will be organization network or whether it will be any government kind of the network, right? Then the next one is your password attacks, right? So everyone knows this kind of attack. By using a packet sniffer you can easily determine the username and the password, right? No, because that, and we can call it as also a brute force attack, right? Brute force which can be useful for identifying username and password information very easily, right? So there are some tools are there, or some programs are formed to get to determine all this kind of the information from the network, right? And they can be use this particular IP spoofing as a first step to crack the attacks, sorry, to crack the passwords, right? And then by using some so IP addresses and all that thing, they can get your access, and then they can may bypass the password authentication also, right, by using some of the techniques, right? So this can be a attacks on your modular network, right? Then the third one is your DOS attacks, right? So this is nothing but of denial of services, right? The service can be unavailable for any kind of the normal use, right? So it will be why it will be done, it will be using it will be exhausting all the resources, right, from your network, right? And or within your operating system, or from your applications, right? And it will be not give you the access, or that particular service will be unavailable for you, right? So this is nothing but your the denial of service attack. So that can be a attack or external threat, we can call it as in a modular network, right? And last one is we will talk about this particular application layer attack. So this is nothing but for the any kind of the software programs, if you are any kind of third party applications if you are using in your network, right? Then this kind of the attacks can be exploited to this particular we can by using that the attackers can gain the access to your computer, right? So and it will be harm your modular network, right? So these type of the attacks also can be happen. So if we see in this particular diagram, right, all these four attacks, right, the four methods, four attack methods are there, which will be related to your enterprise edge model, right? So if we already seen enterprise edge model is nothing but our second functional area of our enterprise network, right? So in this we have a certain sub modules over there, right? E-commerce model, we have internet connectivity model, we have remote access and VPN model, we have WAN and MAN side to side VPN model we have, right? So in that enterprise edge model we will see how these particular four attacks what we have talked about earlier, right? That is IP spoofing, password attack, DOS attack, and application layer attack, right? How it can be affect in our edge enterprise edge model that we will see, right? As you know, in e-commerce model we have a different types of the servers or services, applications are there, for example database servers, application server, web servers, and all that thing, right? So by using that we can launch our applications, or we can use our different kind of the applications, right? For example, web servers we are using for hosting our websites, application server are useful for using specific application that can be also use this particular database server to store their database and all that things, right? So for using this kind of the e-commerce module we may face the application layer types of the attacks, right, which can be gain the access of your computer, and it will be affect your network, right? Then second one is your internet connectivity model, which will having some public kind of the servers and all ISPs and all that things, right? So in this particular model we may face some spoof IP addressing, that IP spoofing we can face, right? Or we can face some flooding related attacks, right? For example, the DOS attack, denial of service attack, then TCP flood, UDP flood, SYNC flood attack, right? So these kind of the flooding attack we can be faced in this particular internet connectivity model, because it having different kind of the public servers, internet service providers, backup servers, and all that things, right? So the main purpose is what you that the services must be unavailable with you, all right? Resources are unavailable, right? And for that purpose, intended to that purpose, this kind of the attack may be happen or may be attacked on this particular module network, right? And then And then the next one is your remote access and VPN module, right? So in that, mainly the authentication based attacks can be happen. For example, password attacks can be actually, brute force attack can be happen, right? Because it will be mostly related to their authentication part, right? So this kind of the attack is happen in this enterprise edge module, right? So that is nothing but your the enterprise network, or also we can call it as your modular network, right? So what we have okay, so what we have covered today is we have seen how the Cisco SONA framework in layer architecture, right? The second layer, we have seen this particular interactive service layer, which having infrastructure layer different services, and on the top of that, application networking services we have. So infrastructure services, we know the security, mobility, storage, voice, compute, identity services we have, and in the network services which we are embedding in this infrastructure layer, security is nothing but your network management, availability, QoS, and AP multicasting, right? Then we have these security services, right, in a modular network designing, and the external threats, right? So what are the external threats we have? The IP spoofing we have, then the password attack we have, then DOS attack we have, and then the application layer attacks we have, right? And how these particular attacks or external threats, right, can be impacted on our modular network, right? That also we have seen today. Okay, so we will stop today. The next part of the this particular contents we will be having in our next session, right? That is your high availability voice services, wireless services, and application network services. Okay, so we will stop today. Thank you for joining the session.